This is the story of how one of the Germanic tribes, Franks, became the dominant tribe in Europe during the Middle Ages. It's the story of several of their kings and how their kings got power and who their kings had to share power with. As you remember, during the Middle Ages, before the fall of Rome, many Germanic tribes had moved into Europe. Frisians, the Saxons, and many others, the Lombards, the Gauls, the Goths. But the one that settled in northwestern Europe was one called the Franks. In 481, one of the Franks, a man by the name of Clovis, became the dominant tribal chieftain in the area. And it was he who was going to become the first king of the Franks. Besides being seen as being king of the Franks, the other main thing that Clovis did was he was baptized into Christianity. Many of the Germanic tribes adopted various types of Christianity, and Clovis accepted Christianity and was baptized. These two pictures, one of on the left, shows a very penitent, peaceful, poorly clothed Clovis being baptized in a barrel by a fairly dominant-looking bishop with others looking on. On the right, you have a different view of Clovis, one who's armed to the teeth with a big broad axe and others, and is being baptized, looking quite a bit more powerful. One hand, Clovis is the humble, submissive king before the church. On the other, he's the warrior king. Clovis died and was later on followed by many of his relatives, who were known as the Merovingian rulers. Unfortunately, many of the Merovingian rulers were quite weak and often, as you see here, quite young. And so they began to be dominated by their head assistants, people who were known as the mayor of the palace. One of those mayors of the palace was a man by the name of Pepin. As time went on, the mayors of the palace became the real power behind the throne. Another mayor of the palace was a man by the name of Charles Martel. Now, as you remember, in the late 600s and early 700s, the religion of Islam was spreading across North Africa and into Europe. It wasn't until they met the Franks and a leader by the name of Charles Martel that they were stopped. Charles Martel, whose name actually meant Charles the Hammer, stopped the Islamic forces from North Africa at a place called the Battle of Tours in the year 732. And of course, that increased the prestige of the Franks and of the Frankish mayors of the palace. In fact, Charles's son, a man by the name of Pepin the Short, actually was able to change and adopt and achieve not only being mayor of the palace, but actually being crowned king of the Franks. starting a new dynasty, which would be known as the Carolingian dynasty. You will notice in this picture that Pepin is being crowned, kneeling before the Pope. The question arises, who is really in charge? Is it the king, or is it the one who makes the king? Pepin also endears himself to the Pope by pushing another Germanic tribe, the Lombards, out of northern Italy, shown here with the star, and donating it to the Pope. This did two things. One was it made the king very acceptable and friendly and connected to the Pope. But it also did something to the Pope, and that was it made the Pope an earthly ruler. Not just a spiritual ruler, not just the vicar of Christ, but an earthly ruler with a kingdom of his own. Which raises a series of questions. One of which is this: are there two authorities? The king, a civil authority, and the Pope, a spiritual authority? And if so, who's really in charge?